Charlie, you ever play roulette?
On occasion.
Well, let me give you a word of advice.
Always bet on black.
From the synagogue of Satan. And by the way, the synagogue of Satan doesn't mean that everybody in it is Jewish. That's right. It's a combination of people, Gentile Jews, black and white, that agree on an idea. And some on a lesser level do not know what those on the highest level are doing. But they always give you a noble reason for what they're doing. Now, I want to talk to you and our president, because now they're pushing President Obama to strike Iran. And quietly, they're pushing him to destroy Farrakhan. They want our president to deal with me and Iran, and that would make the synagogue of Satan happy. Israel's Vice Prime Minister Moshe Ya'alon voiced disappointment in the Obama administration, saying election year considerations lay behind its caution over tougher Iran sanctions sought by U.S. legislators. Now I'm talking about this synagogue of Satan more direct. The U.S. Senate passed a resolution by a majority of 100 to 1 to pass sanctions, and in the U.S. administration there is hesitation for fear of oil prices rising this year, he said, out of election year considerations. Well, Obama said there are important risks to consider before any military strike against Iran. He really doesn't want to do it. I read recently that he really was not in favor of the attack on Gaddafi, but they turned him. And he becomes the spokesman for them. See, you got to understand Satan. Damn, I got to hip you to this wicked one. When they wanted to attack Panama, go into Grenada and take out Bishop, see, they use a black face. They passed over generals and put Colin Powell in as chief of staff. And they put a black man in front of a policy to kill black people. And some of us like that, because we get a pat on the back by our former slave masters and their children. You would kill your own just to get a pat on the back? Now they wanted Obama in the White House for several reasons. One, the stimulus package. Obama, that wasn't his idea. That was Wall Street's idea through Geithner. He believed them, he did it. And they're beating the hell out of him for something that didn't come from him. But they hide their hands. See, it's like this. Oh man, I wish I had time. Do you know in all of its modern history, Iran has never attacked another country? I'm going to say it again. I want you to think about what I'm saying. In all of Iran's modern history, it has never attacked another country. But what is your record, America? What is your record, Israel? You want to build up the American public to go to war against that country? I don't care what they say, what Iran say. I say harsh things too. But I've never hurt nobody except with the truth. And if I hurt you with the truth, well, you just be hurt. But the real aggressors in this drama, man, when you look at the record of America and the record of Israel, Israel is armed, they say, with 300 nuclear weapons, but will not sign the non-proliferation agreement. They have a track record of attacking nuclear facilities of other people. The USA has launched over 40 foreign attacks since 1979 and is the only country in history to use nuclear weapons. When they were fighting in Vietnam, the US senators said, and I quote, "Let's bomb them back into the Stone Age." Well, there's some bombs coming your way that won't be from a foreign power. I want to acquaint you with your destruction. The door is getting more narrow now for you. Israel, you bombed Iraqi power station in 1981. You attacked and invaded Lebanon, 25,000 plus Syrians and Palestinians killed. In 2003, military incursions into Gaza and Nablus. 2006, attacked and invaded Lebanon, killed over 1,000 men, women, and children. 2007, attacked and bombed Syria. 2008, February, attack on Gaza, over 100 murdered. 2008 November, attack on Gaza, killing over 1,300 civilians, and then refused to cooperate with UN investigations. 2010, 9 murdered in attack on an aid flotilla in international waters. Iran, 0 attacks. 0. Let me ask you a question. Last night, they had something on television celebrating the 70th birth anniversary of Brother Muhammad Ali. Why do you love him? Is it because he was a great fighter? Or did you love him because he stood up for a principle? Now, I'm going on record right now. If America goes to war with Iran, all the young people in the nation, you do not fight in America's wars against another Muslim country. We are all conscientious objectors. Don't even tell us to use our medical skill in your army. We won't have to fight. We ain't going nowhere near that. Now, you young mothers up in here and grandmothers that got these young warriors, and they tell you they ain't got no job, they want to join the army. You tell them, come on, baby, we'll create a job before you go to fight for the enemy. The enemy! I advise white and black America Hispanic and Asian America? Why would you send your children to die for a war engineered by Zionists who love Israel more than they love the United States of America? Talk back to me! Lieberman, the senator from Connecticut, he said, with 32 senators with him, they moved the goalpost. It was, if Iran developed a nuclear weapon, we all go after them. Now they changed the language. One word. If Iran develops nuclear capabilities. We'll go to war. Iran is already at that stage.
The Iranian government says it's made major advances in its nuclear program. State television showed President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad watching as Iranian-made fuel rods were inserted into a research reactor. The president also announced the installation of 3,000 new centrifuges for uranium enrichment. He repeated claims the nuclear program is for peaceful purposes, but Western governments believe the country is working towards a nuclear weapon. In response to the developments, the US and the European Union last month introduced new sanctions targeting the Iranian oil industry.
Anybody in their right mind in the Muslim world would attack America knowing the response? America boasts that she could kill the planet 3 times over. Well,
we're sitting down with Douglas McGregor, a retired Army colonel who fought in the Gulf War and was referred to by some officials as the best fighter the U.S. Army has got. Mr. McGregor, thank you very much for joining me.
Good to be here.
President Obama has put forward an ultimatum for Iran: either make progress with negotiators or face consequences. Consequences meaning war. Some say a strike may happen within the next few months. In your opinion, how realistic is that? Should we expect a war in summer?
Topical question right now in Washington, D.C. I think the answer right at the moment is no. President Obama is not remotely interested in waging war against Iran. So let's be clear about that. No one at the top of the United States military establishment is interested in waging war against Iran. And the intelligence community has made it abundantly clear that Iran is nowhere near the development of a nuclear warhead or the capacity to deliver one. So when you add those things up, it's very, very obvious that at least in the places that count, the White House, the Department of Defense, there is no interest in waging a war on Iran.
Let me say something. There's a great push from Israeli influence groups for President Obama to back a potential strike. And as you said, the administration says the Iranians haven't even decided to build a bomb. So all this war talk is based on what?
You're the great Satan, we're the little Satan. You're the great Satan, we're the little Satan.
It's based really on, I think, the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee and its subordinate elements or affiliated elements that represent enormous quantities of money that over many years have cultivated enormous influence and power in Congress. And you
so the war talk is just to appease the lobbyists?
Well, I think you've got a lot of people on the Hill who fall into 2 categories. One category that is interested in money and wants to be reelected, and they don't want to run the risk of the various lobbies that are pushing military action against Iran to contribute money to their opponents.
Colonel McGregor, some say the Israeli leadership sees this summer as that window of opportunity that they don't want to miss. What do you think about that window of opportunity for Israel?
Well, if you were to launch a strike in the summer, This would cause a dramatic downturn in the economy. Just consider that we had a rumor that supposedly Iranian commandos had destroyed a pipeline in Saudi Arabia. Utter fanciful nonsense. And eventually it was denied by Aramco, the Saudi Arabian oil corporation. But in that short period of time, oil skyrocketed on the market, up beyond $115 a barrel. But the point is, just the rumor of action was enough to send oil through the roof. So we had a foretaste there of the dramatic economic consequences for the world if we move ahead and support Israel in its desire to strike Iran. That's why I don't think President Obama is remotely interested.
So you don't think that the Israeli leadership sees this summer as a window of opportunity?
Well, they may, but look, don't count out the Israeli population. Let's not assume that everyone in Israel is anxious to see Iran destroyed. I think that's misleading. There's more division of opinion in Israel than we think. So again, how long can Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Barak play this game of essentially trying to bully President Obama and push him into an action that he would otherwise choose not to take? What we need to do is move beyond this ridiculous confrontational setting that both of us are trapped in. And that's very hard to do in an election year when everyone is pandering to various elements of the electorate for money and votes.
Colonel, let's say world powers, P5+1, negotiate something, but the results don't satisfy Israel and the U.S., and they do go to war in summer, as some predict. What kind of immediate backlash should they expect?
Iran's trump card is subversion. The ability to subvert.
So the retaliation would be in the form of terrorism?
It would be in the form of what I would call asymmetric attacks. In other words, high payoff, low investment. In other words, use what you can beyond your borders in populations friendly to you to attack the other person's interests. Now, we shouldn't underestimate how much damage that could involve. And remember, we know that, for instance, Hezbollah, as well as as Iranian elements, are here in the United States. So we know that we would sustain losses here at home. There would be damage here in the United States. How many bombs would you have to explode in public malls to do enough damage to awaken everybody to what's going on? My point is, those are the kinds of things that I would expect, but a direct military confrontation would be a losing proposition for them. They might be able to inflict damage on our air forces and our naval forces, but not on the scale that would make any difference to the outcome. They would sustain enormous damage and enormous losses.
What about long-term effects? Some say even if Iranians haven't decided to build a bomb, they sure will if attacked.
Well, I would say there's something more important. We talk about what they will do if they are attacked. I think we should look at the rest of the world. What will the rest of the world do if Israel attacks Iran? Remember, this is an unprovoked assault. I mean, the Israelis can claim otherwise and insist otherwise and paint this picture of enormous danger represented to Israel, but the truth is no one buys that. My view has always been that if you do this, if Israel does this, that Iran will very definitely have nuclear weapons. They won't have to build them, they'll get them. People will provide those to them. They will have more help than they know what to do with. I think we should look at the rest of the world. What will the rest of the world do if Israel attacks Iran? Remember, this is an unprovoked assault. I mean, the Israelis can claim otherwise and insist otherwise and paint this picture of enormous danger represented to Israel, but the truth is no one buys that. My view has always been that if you do this, if Israel does this, that Iran will very definitely have nuclear weapons. They won't have to build them, they'll get them. People will provide those to them. They will have more help than they know what to do with.
If we start bombing Iran, I'm telling you right now, it's not going to work. We're not going to achieve decapitation, regime change, all that. What will happen is the Iranians will respond, and we will feel the pain instantaneously.
And Iran will grow more hostile and more bitter and more angry and more dangerous than it has ever been.
We will surge a number of divisions in, probably through Azerbaijan down the Caspian Sea coast, in an effort to push the regime over. And when they don't push over, we now have 40,000 troops trapped. We have now reached the definition of significant numbers of U.S. troops in harm's way, and there is no reserve to pull them out. There's no more cavalry to come riding to the rescue. And at that point in time, my concern is that we will use nuclear weapons to break the backbone of Iranian resistance, and it may not work. But what it will do is this: it will unleash the nuclear genie. And so for all those Americans out there tonight who say, you know what, taking on Iran's a good thing. I just told you, if we take on Iran, we're going to use nuclear weapons. And if we use nuclear weapons, the genie ain't going back in the bottle until an American city is taken out by an Islamic weapon in retaliation. So tell me, you want to go to war with Iran? Pick your city. Pick your city. Tell me which one you want gone. Seattle, LA, Boston, New York, Miami. Pick one, because at least one's going. And that's something we should all think about before we march down this path of insanity.
What, in your opinion, keeps the U.S. from attacking Syria?
There are several things. First of all, there is a quiet recognition behind closed doors that if Assad is removed, however much people do not like Hafez al-Assad, that the government that succeeds him will be a radical Islamist Sunni Muslim government, hostile to Israel, hostile to the West, hostile to Shia Islam. In other words, not a good development from the standpoint of the United States or Europe. So I think that's understood. Secondly, there's an understanding that Syria actually has, despite the fact it's much smaller than Iran, 22, 23 million people, I think, very good armed forces. It does have an integrated air defense structure that would take some time to dismantle, but its ground force is actually very good. And it's of the Arab forces, I would describe the Syrians as probably being among the best, if not the best disciplined, best officered.
What would be the main argument that you would suggest for the U.S. not to attack Iran?
Right now, we see Iran through one lens, in one way. We see this as a unchanging theocracy that is virulently anti-American, anti-Western, incurable, if you will. In other words, it's fatally stricken with this theocratic disease of religious fanaticism. I don't. I think it will change. And I think if we can back away from this, Iran will evolve differently over the next 10 years. And we don't have to have this hostile relationship or confrontation.
That would be your main argument?
That's one of my arguments. Yeah, in other words, don't look at things today.
That Iran is going to change for the better?
Yeah, look at the future. Look at what is driving Iran. What is Iran's principal interest? Internal modernization, economic development. What do its people want? Israel the focus of everyone's hatred in Iran? Absolutely not. Most Iranians could care less about it. In fact, most Iranians are not very friendly towards Arabs. So the bottom line is, why are we doing what we're doing? We're looking at things as though they will not change. My point is that Nixon had the foresight to understand China was at the beginning of a long period of change. My point is that we're going to discover in the next few years that Iran, too, is at the beginning of a long period of change.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Machines, what we used to spark H rapping, feeling like the boss in my Scarface jacket. Time to squeeze, you know my heart race drastic. Spit fire like a smart 8 matches.
Charlie, you ever play roulette?
On occasion.
Well, let me give you a word of advice. Always bet on black.
From the synagogue of Satan. And by the way, the synagogue of Satan doesn't mean that everybody in it is Jewish. That's right. It's a combination of people, Gentile Jews, black and white, that agree on an idea. And some on a lesser level do not know what those on the highest level are doing. But they always give you a noble reason for what they're doing. Now, I want to talk to you and our president, because now they're pushing more direct. The U.S. Senate passed a resolution by a majority of 100 to 1 to pass sanctions. And in the U.S. administration, there is hesitation for fear of oil prices rising this year, he said, out of election year considerations. Well, Obama said there are important risks to consider before any military strike against Iran. He really doesn't want to do it. I read recently that he really was not in favor of the attack on Gaddafi, but they turned him. And he becomes the spokesman, President Obama, to strike Iran. And quietly, they're pushing him to destroy Farrakhan. They want our president to deal with me and Iran, and that would make the synagogue of Satan happy. Israel's Vice Prime Minister Moshe Ya'alon voiced disappointment in the Obama administration, saying election year considerations lay behind its caution over tougher Iran sanctions sought by U.S. legislators. Now I'm talking about this synagogue of Satan, spokesman for them. See, you got to understand Satan. Damn, I got to hip you to this wicked one. When they wanted to attack Panama, go into Grenada and take out Bishop, see, they use a black face. They passed over generals and put Colin Powell in as chief of staff. And they put a black man in front of a policy to kill black people. And some of us like that because we get a pat on the back by our former slave masters and their children. You would kill your own just to get a pat on the back? Now, they wanted Obama in the White House for several reasons. One, the stimulus package. Obama, that wasn't his idea. That was Wall Street's idea through Geithner. He believed them, he did it. And they're beating the hell out of him for something that didn't come from him. But they hide their hands. See, it's like this. Oh man, I wish I had time. Do you know in all of its modern history,